Look, the book is always better, but these come pretty close. Hi, welcome, come on in. My name is Aoife, and today I am taking you through some of the book to movie or book to TV adaptations that I have absolutely loved. I am a strong believer that the book is always better. There is just a different vibe, a different storytelling method when you are reading the words on a page versus when you're seeing it being acted out in front of you. But that said, quite a few of the adaptations that I have seen have really impressed me over the years. Bookish adaptations and modernizations and retellings are nothing new. Quite a lot of movies and TV shows have in some way been influenced by classic literature. For example, Clueless is based on Emma. She's All That is based on Pygmalion. She's the Man is based on The Twelfth Night. 10 Things I Hate About You is based on The Taming of the Shrew. There are so many movies and TV shows that started their life out as books and that I actually do stand behind. First one is one of my favorite books of all time, and that is The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. This one brings me to tears pretty much every time that I see it, so I knew that I had really high hopes for the adaptation of this. I loved the book, if you can say that about a book that is set in World War II and that is narrated by death, but watching the movie actually brought it to a whole other level for me. I thought that Jeffrey Rush's acting as Hans Huberman was just phenomenal. He really brought one of my favorite characters to life with such warmth and joy, and I really loved watching him just embody this wonderful man that I've been reading. I was a little bit concerned about Sophie Nalice's acting. I was a little bit worried about how a French Canadian was going to portray a German, but she did a really great job and her accent was flawless in my opinion. I also really enjoyed Brooklyn by Colin Tobin as a movie because there was just something that I could connect with it. When the film came out, I had just recently moved to Wales to do my master's. So I connected with this in a whole other way that I didn't connect with the book. Mainly because I now had that lived experience of living as an immigrant, being in a different country, and even though you have the same language, and even though some of the things you will have been familiar with, there's still quite a lot that you need to adjust to. And that is perfectly shown in Brooklyn. You might not be as far away from home as Ailish was, but I still had a couple of issues with adjusting to life in Wales, with homesickness, with figuring out how things worked. So I definitely shed a tear or two in the cinema. Also, while living in Wales, I was really impacted by Room by Emma Donoghue, but for a completely different reason. I read the book of this while I was working in London for 2 weeks on an internship, and when I came back to Cardiff, I decided I was going to watch the movie late at night, pitch dark, all by myself. I had so much trouble sleeping for such a long time after that because of how exposed the book had made me feel. This movie did nothing to quell that. The book is about a young boy who is living with his mother in a 12-foot by 12-foot room, and he has never seen the outside world. But one day, he and his mother escape the man who has taken her as hostage, and Jack is trying to figure out where his place is in this brand new world with which he has absolutely no experience. I have never felt so exposed in my entire life than when I finished that book on the way into London and walked through the streets feeling like every eye on the city was on top of me. And watching the movie while I was at home alone late one night, it really did bring up the eeriness factor for me. Something slightly more upbeat, I fully stand by the movie adaptation of Mary Poppins by P.L. Travers. I know that P.L. Travers went to the premiere of this and was appalled with what they had done with her character. But honestly, I think they had turned it on its head in such a wonderful way. Now, I have read the source material of this, and it is a completely different world to the Disney-fied movie that we have. There are 4 children in the Banks family, for example, and Mary Poppins is a lot more strict. She's a lot more straight-edged. Whereas in the movie, she is much softer, she's much gentler, she's much happier, and there are only 2 children that she's in charge of. I genuinely think that this might be one of the best book to movie adaptations that I've ever seen, even though it strays so far away from the source material. One adaptation that I have absolutely loved in the past few years is To All the Boys I've Loved Before by Jenny Han. I absolutely love the coziness of these books, and it translated so perfectly into the movie. I really love just settling down on a chilly autumn night and putting on all three of these movies because they feel like such a warm and comforting hug. And I also really love the Covey Song family as a whole, how supportive they are of one another, how much they are there for one another, but also how realistic of a portrayal of siblings this is. Because they do love each other, they are each other's ride and die, but they are also prepared to kill each other. Because Lara Jean is definitely ready to put her sister Kitty into the ground when she realizes what has been happening with all of the love notes that she used to write when she was younger. And I just loved that book adaptation. Something that I didn't love though is how the ending of To All the Boys I've Loved Before didn't necessarily tie in with P.S. I Still Love You. There's a completely different person who comes along and plays John, and when you're watching both movies back to back, as I have often done, it's just a little bit jarring. Another Netflix adaptation that I've loved, and sadly one that was very short-lived, is the Babysitter's Club series. I really loved how they modernized the show, how they brought it from a set of books that had been brought out in the 1980s and 1990s, screaming all the way to the 2010s, 2020s, but it never felt forced. There are specific reasons why Claudia's phone situation is different. There are specific reasons why Stacy's medical life is different. I really enjoyed this series, and it brought me all the way back to my childhood when I was lining up in front of the shelves of my local library and perusing the Babysitter's Club books that they had there like it was gold I had just mined from the earth. I absolutely loved that series. So when I heard that they were bringing it to the screen, I knew that I wanted to watch it. Sadly, it was cancelled after 2 seasons, and I really wish that this had been given the room to grow that it deserved. I really wish that we were expanding on that series more, and that we were watching other stories of this season of books that really deserved to have been told. There are so many other plot points across the entire 130 something books from the Babysitter's Club that weren't even touched on by the Netflix series. And I really wish they had been given their chance. Now, I was really touched by the book A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness, but my goodness, I did not expect what was going to happen to me when I watched the movie. It is a very harrowing story about a boy who is talking to a monster that is living in the trees, and he is very reluctant to share what his actual wish and dream is for the world. When it is eventually revealed as to what this boy just wants more than anything else in the entire world, it ripped my heart in two. And all of this happened about 20,000 feet over the Atlantic while I was on the way back from the US. I watched this in an almost sleep-deprived state because I cannot sleep on planes, and it was an 8-hour flight that truly was just knocking me for six. So I decided, what is a way that I can make this even worse on myself? Let's watch one of the saddest movies that has come out in the last while. I was a husk of a person when I got off that plane, but it was one of the best adaptations I think I've ever seen. A world that I know I will never live in is the world of the Crazy Rich Asians series by Kevin Kwan, but I absolutely love how chaotic and insane it is. It's so over the top with its wealth and splendor that I knew any kind of adaptation of this would just look kind of like a parody, but it was done so well. One of my favorite scenes in this entire movie is actually the wedding scene. It's got such a beautiful soundtrack to it. It's got a really wonderful overlying feeling of love throughout the whole thing. And it just balances out the completely ridiculous over-the-topness of the rest of it. I haven't heard anything about what's going to happen to the rest of the series. I know that there are plans to make China Rich Girlfriend as a movie, but I haven't heard anything about what's going to happen to it, if it's even worked at the moment. But if it does come out, given how well they did with Crazy Rich Asians, I am pretty sure they're going to knock this one out of the bag. I have watched A Man Called Otto, which is based on A Man Called Uwe by Friedrich Bachmann, twice. And both times I have been inconsolably crying. Tom Hanks is a phenomenal actor, and he balances phenomenally the mix between comedy and drama and tragedy in this movie. and I absolutely loved it. I do really enjoy the book and I do really enjoy Friedrich Bachmann's writing, but I feel like the movie just brought a whole new level to it, and it really does show you Otto or Uwe in a completely different light as the book does. This one is going to be a little bit harder for you to go and watch, but a couple of years ago there was a stage adaptation of Asking for It by Louise O'Neill. This book has hit me in the gut every single time that I read it. So I knew that going into the adaptation, I would need nerves and a stomach of steel. For pretty much the rest of my life, I am going to remember what happened when this play finished. Everybody stopped talking, the stage went black, and the entire auditorium just froze. There wasn't a sound came out of everyone. Then, about 10 or so seconds later, there was just rapturous applause. I don't think I've ever heard applause like it in my entire life. There was a standing ovation. There was a rapturous applause for about 2 or 3 minutes after the play had ended. It was a phenomenon. I am still blown over by it to this day, and it was actually the first time that I had ever seen Paul Mescal in anything. One that a lot of people don't even know is an adaptation is The Devil Wears Prada by Lauren Weisberger. I did read this about 10 or so years ago while I was on a family holiday, and I remember not being super impressed with the book, but the movie is just one of the best movies that I've ever seen. I really love the chemistry between Anne Hathaway and Stanley Tucci. I really love Stanley Tucci as Nigel in the entire movie anyway, but Meryl Streep, who could play Batman and be the correct choice, just knocks it out of the park as Miranda Priestley. She brings that coldness, that iciness, the unapproachability of Miranda Priestley to the movie in such a phenomenal way. With all of the hype that the book series has gotten recently, I sat down and rewatched the first 3 movies of The Hunger Games again, and I was still blown away by how impactful it was. I was still blown away by how well it brought the horror and the tragedy of the books onto the screen. How well Jennifer Lawrence portrayed Katniss and how much of a rawness and a likability she brought to her when Katniss can be not the most likable person all the time. I absolutely loved this series. I know that there are a couple of films that I need to still watch. I still need to watch The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, and I haven't even read Sunrise on the Reaping yet, so when that adaptation does come out, I'm not in a position that I can watch it yet. But if it's anything like the first 4 movies have been, I'm in for a good ride. Those are the movie adaptations that I truly think are worth the watch. What is your favorite book to movie adaptation? If you would love to leave me a comment but you can't think of anything you'd like to say, then just leave me a video camera emoji. Don't forget to like and subscribe because I have new videos up every week. Now, get on out of here.